Hi guys, I thought I would just do a wee video today because probably the number one thing that you guys ask me is how I stamp on photos successfully, I guess. So I thought I'd just give you a quick rundown on how exactly I do that. Now, I know a lot of you guys struggle with stamping on photos, and I'll be perfectly honest, I've never struggled with stamping on photos, so I can't really specifically answer questions as to what's going wrong for you. So I'll just show you what I do, and hopefully that will answer any questions you have. I think the number one thing that helps with stamping on photos is the type of paper that you stamp on. Because I print from home, this is the paper I use, the Photo Paper Plus Glossy 2 from Canon, and I print on an inkjet printer. So I think that that's probably my number one tip for stamping on photos is when you're having photos professionally printed as opposed to printing at home. When I print at home, this paper is designed to absorb ink. So I think then when you're using ink to stamp on it, it doesn't slip around as much because the paper is actually designed to absorb the ink. Whereas like a professionally printed photo may well have different properties that just makes the surface, although this is glossy, a professionally printed photo may be just slightly slicker. I'm not saying it's impossible to stamp on them. I think you'll just have to be a lot more careful than what I have to be. So I'm just going to run through all the different inks that I use and how they work on these photos, and we'll go from there. I have got the narrative stamp set from Citrus Twist Kits, and I'm just going to use that today to show you how these different inks look on different photos. I love this So Dramatic stamp, so I think I'll use that one. Probably the ink I use the most on photos is just this Memento Tuxedo black ink. It is just a dye ink, and although I use this a lot, I did really struggle using this ink when I wasn't using this paper. So that's how it looks. You can see it's a little bit sort of patchy. That, I guess, is just the nature of the dye ink. If that's an issue for you, you can double stamp them, and that tends to take up a lot of that. But when I couldn't get a hold of this type of paper and I was using other papers, I did find that using this dye ink, when I went to peel the stamp off, it would almost like rip off the coating of the paper and of course the ink with it. So when I was using a paper other than this, I wouldn't have used this particular dye ink. Instead, I was using the Versafine Onyx black ink, and I do still use this occasionally, and you'll see this gives you a much more solid stamp, a much richer black. The thing I choose the dye ink for over this pigment ink is because it does require that I stamp off and maybe give the stamps a wipe, because it does stay wet on the stamp for a bit longer. So I will clean that off. Now, it doesn't stay wet on the photo, and again, I think that that's because of the type of paper that I'm using. So because this is a pigment ink, if you're using a paper other than this, I wouldn't recommend rubbing it or touching it. Let it dry for as long as you can. So if you are having trouble with stamping on photos, I guess the only advice I would have is like you have to go straight down and straight back up again. So when you're coming back up, it might pay to hold the photo down, because sometimes the stamps do sort of stick onto the paper and it can lift, and if that comes up, you might end up smudging. So maybe one hand on the paper, one hand on the stamp, straight down and straight back up again. You can see how it sticks when it doesn't have any ink on it. So another type of stamp pad is this jet black StazOn. I tend not to use StazOn ink unless it's for something super slick. So again, that might be really helpful with your professionally printed photos, because it does stain your stamps. Now, it doesn't harm your stamps in any way. It does just make them black. So I don't tend to use these that often, but I will show you here the difference here. Now, the other thing is, because I don't use this ink pad much, it is quite dry, so I'm going to stamp that heaps. So you can see you get a way more solid than the dye ink, but I don't find the black quite as dark as the Versafine ink. And I am just going to give this a quick rub. So you can see it has stained the stamps. If you're quick enough, you can clean them a little bit, but you'll see it's got way more staining on it than any of those other inks. But like I say, that doesn't damage the stamp in any way. It just darkens the stamp up. Other types of inks are the coloured ones. I love stamping in white. The best white I've found for stamping on darker coloured photos is this Brilliance Moonlight White. It gives the most solid white that I've found. It is slightly, I don't know if you'll pick it up on camera, it is slightly metallic, so that might help with why it looks so opaque, but you don't notice the metallic so much. It does just give a nice opaque white look. And then of course the other colour I love stamping on, especially on darker backgrounds of photos, is the Brilliance Galaxy Gold. And in the same way as the white, it's just really opaque and it looks really beautiful on darker coloured backgrounds. But you can also use it on the lighter colour backgrounds as well. It just perhaps is a bit more of a subtle look, and you know, stamping it on orange is definitely not going to work. But look, if I show you up here. You know, that's a really nice look as well. And so you can see, like, I've just stamped that and it's like perfectly dry straight away. So you'll often see in my videos I don't actually clean my stamps. I'm literally only doing that today because I am using the different stamp pads one after the other. At most, while I'm filming, I will just stamp off onto a scrap piece of paper, and I do tend to just give my stamps a once over with a cloth after I finished filming, only if they're particularly dirty or still wet. Otherwise, normally stamping off onto paper cleans them enough for my liking. And so the only other types of inks that I might use on a photo are just other coloured dye inks and perhaps a chalk ink. But I would normally use them maybe only as sort of a background stamp. So if I grab one of these. Now this is another one of my Colour Theory ink pads that is like super wet. So I just am a little bit careful inking it up. And again, just have to sort of peel it off the photo because it does stick quite dramatically. But again, that's dry straight away. It is patchy like the Tuxedo Black Memento ink was. So again, that's just the nature of dye inks. And the only other type of ink I have here is just this chalk ink. And actually, I'll be honest, I'm not sure that I've ever stamped on a photo with chalk ink. So let's see how it goes. That's not bad. It's quite patchy. Actually, that stamped really nicely too. So there you go. That's another option. Again, I think it's the type of paper because it's absorbing the ink straight away. It doesn't matter what type of ink it is. It just sucks it straight down into the paper, so it's virtually dry straight away. Which means you can then stamp over the top, which makes it really easy for stamp layering. And again, this one I'm just cleaning off a little bit because it was going to stay wet. And now I have a nice clean stamp again. So you can see, like, I don't have any dramas with stamping on photos. I'm also not that sort of fussy about how good they look. I don't mind that this is a bit patchy. I don't mind that this maybe was a little bit too inky and it's a little bit, you know, smushed around the edges. I think that's the nature of stamping with actual physical clear stamps onto photos. Otherwise, if you like the stamped on photos look but have struggle with this actual stamping of it, maybe try digital stamps as an option. That way they are perfect every time. But I really do think that the real trick to printing on photos is the paper that you are printing on. So if you really like the look of stamped on photos, I would suggest giving this paper a go and printing at home on your inkjet printer. Do let me know if you've got any questions, guys. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. Bye.